Chicken parm is probably not the lowest calorie of meals, but with some small tweaks it can be certainly made healthier than the traditional version. Let's start with the meat. I will use a 200 gram skinless chicken breast. As you might notice, a chicken breast starts very thin and gets thicker towards the end. Most people that cook chicken like this end up with a dry thin side and a raw thick side. To avoid this from happening, I will put this into a zip bag and then take anything that is heavy, I will use a pot, and smash this focused on the thicker side for around 30 seconds until I get a fairly even breast that now can be cooked to the same temperature. As we also learned from our ultimate chicken video, brining the meat is a crucial step towards a juicy and tender meat. So I will add 1 gram of salt to both sides of the chicken and refrigerate this for at least an hour or even better overnight. As a reference range, you can always go for around 0.5 to 1% of the chicken's weight as salt. Next is the batter. The usual step is to take 3 plates and use them to add flour, eggs and breadcrumbs. To be honest, that's way too many dishes for me, so I always use 1 plate if I only make 1 to 2 servings. This step is probably where a lot of people believe that they add most of the calories because they simply don't measure everything. But the truth is that you need way less flour, eggs and breadcrumbs than you might think. For a 200 gram chicken breast, I will only add 5 grams of flour into the plate, and that's enough to cover the entire chicken. This has 18 calories. To add flavor, I like to add a couple of dashes onion powder, garlic powder and also black pepper. Next is the egg, and here's where you have the choice. If you add 1 entire egg per chicken, you will have more flavor but also 75 calories because of the yolk. However, if you only add the egg white, you will sacrifice a bit of flavor that you honestly might not even notice and add only less than 20 calories. That is up to you. I personally will add 30 grams of egg white. The last ingredient are the breadcrumbs, and here I will use Japanese breadcrumbs called panko. If you can find these, please use them. They are way crunchier than the western style breadcrumbs, even if you don't deep fry your meat. I will add 10 grams of panko in total, which is again enough to cover the entire chicken. So, as you can see, I only added 70 calories worth of batter, which is not that much considering that I covered a 200 gram chicken breast. Now, usually the next step would be deep frying this, and as you can imagine, deep frying will add a ton of calories, but how much exactly is not quite clear, as there is almost no research on this because it's so difficult to exactly measure how many calories deep frying add. What I could gather is that deep frying a battered chicken breast will add between 10 to 20% of the chicken's weight as oil. 10% would be in this case 20 grams, which doesn't seem like a lot, but is actually 180 calories, which is almost as much as the entire chicken breast and 2.5 times as much as the batter. To me personally, that's not really worth it. So instead, I again sacrifice a bit of flavor and crunch and bake this in the oven at 200 degrees Celsius or 400 F for 12 to 15 minutes. Keep this step in mind, we will talk about this again in a minute. As this is baking, I will prepare the sauce. If I make only 1 serving, I honestly don't bother making my own sauce and use a store-bought one that in my opinion tastes also pretty good. I just don't want to waste an entire can of tomatoes if I'm going to use only 50 grams anyways. If you make more servings however, I would saute an onion with garlic in a pan with a bit of oil, then add the entire can of tomatoes, a bit of dry oregano and let it simmer for 10 minutes before adding a bunch of fresh basil. Easy peasy. The last thing is the cheese, and actually fresh low-fat mozzarella is a pretty good protein source. This particular one has 160 calories and 20 grams of protein per 100 grams of cheese. I will slice 3 pieces of cheese that weighs 50 grams in total. So, everything is ready, so let's check the chicken. To be safe, measure the chicken with a thermometer, as this is the only way to not overcook or undercook your meat. I will go for 72 degrees Celsius or 160 F and remove the chicken. As you can see, the color is not as nice as it gets when deep fried, but it's still crunchy. I will add 50 grams of sauce on top, also a bit of fresh basil, and then I will add the mozzarella. Now this gets back into the oven just until the cheese is melted. If you have a broiler, that would be perfect, but then please don't use parchment paper as it can burn. Few minutes later and there you go, a healthier, still juicy version of a chicken parm. Now you remember when I said that we will talk again about the baking of the chicken? Here is why. I tried to bake another piece of chicken, but this one I actually baked for almost 45 minutes until the exterior became super crunchy. Look at that color, it's almost as crunchy as deep fried. The thing is that because it was cooked for so long, it has a temperature of over 90 degrees Celsius, which is normally a complete disaster. But I also dry brined this for 10 hours to see if this can counteract the baking time. And you know what? It does. Even though it's technically overbaked, it's not as dry as I would expect. It's still acceptable and also still a bit tender. So my conclusion is that if you have the time to dry brine this for longer, you can get away with a longer baking time, resulting in crunchy exterior and still have a juicy result. I would not bake this for 45 minutes, but maybe 25 to 30. The macros of the chicken parm are 387 calories, 18 grams of carbs, 8 grams of fat and 61 grams of protein, and would be great with some sauteed vegetables or a big salad. Speaking of which, check this video out to see how you can make a massive high protein salad, and see you there.